home improvement. Enjoy being educated in such topics as personal injury law, community association law, family law, bankruptcy law, along with health show topics like pain management, men's health, and dental implants. Now, sit back and enjoy today's Ask the Experts with host Steve-O.
Hey, welcome to the second half of the Ask the Expert show. We are on every Monday and Thursday nights from 6 to 7. We're actually adding a new show at 7 to 7:30 on Tuesday nights. So you don't want to miss that. We're on 1470 AM, 96.9 FM, 95.3 FM, and 96.9 FM. Anyways, four stations there, which is unheard of in the industry. We are on four stations and we do a live show, not pre recorded. Our shows are live. Um, we're waiting on Shane Farnsworth, who's our expert tonight. And I don't know, it's really funny, Freddie. We've been having problems with people getting on. I don't know what it is. We had some problems last week. People couldn't get on, and Shane has been with us for wow, he's been with us for 3 years now, and he's one of our. Maybe he should call in, Shane. If you're listening to the show, maybe you should call in at 888-565-1470. If you're having problems getting on. We'll wait and see if Shane gets on. Again, it's 888-565-1470. We're talking about personal injury law tonight. And like I said, starting tomorrow night, we've added another show at 7 to 7:30. God, show is just exploding, getting bigger and bigger. And while we're waiting for Shane to come on, I know he's having trouble because Shane never has been late, ever, ever, ever. And I know he's having some kind of problem getting on the show, but I'm looking because usually he would email me, and I don't see any emails from Shane. So we'll just again, we're if you'd like to watch tonight's show, yeah, you can actually watch our show. All you have to go is to our Facebook page, which is Ask the Experts, Steve-O, it's the letter O, Steve-O host, and uh, you can actually watch tonight's show. You can watch me and you can watch Shane. Um, Again, I mean, I don't understand. It's really kind of strange that he's not on. We had a couple people had a hard time getting on last week, but I got to tell you, if you watch Fox News, I mean, that's national, and they are all. I mean, screens are freezing. They people. I mean, they sound like they're in a well. It is just amazing. I mean, that our technology right here in South Florida with Freddie Santori, AMP2.TV is so much better. So I don't know what kind of problems that Shane is having. What we're going to talk about tonight is Florida's no fault law. We're going to be talking about different types of coverages. We're going to talk about accidents and injuries and what your insurance should cover. Um, we're going to talk about PIP. Uh, Many of you know what the PIP is, and they only go up to about, I think they go up to $10,000 with injuries. Um, you got to know how PIP works, and also the kind of coverage you get with PIP. These are all questions that we're going to be going over tonight. And it's so important that when you have an automobile accident, you give an attorney a call. Um, First of all, if you understand the way that you are charged by Shane, is unless he collects, you don't pay him anything. I mean, if it goes to court, there's other things, but I am telling you, it doesn't cost you anything to sit down with Shane Farnsworth, and it is just it's amazing. In fact, he's even had some of his our listeners who actually retained him. He actually brought him on the show, and it was so cool seeing how pleased they were with his work. And I know you see all these, the buses and the big signs and the TV ads, and I've actually had a couple friends of mine who have actually used them, and they said they felt like they were in a factory. Well, there he is. There's Shane.
There
Hi,
I am,
Shane.
yes. Hi, how
There
are
you
you?
are.
Yep, had some
I
technical
was just
difficulties, sorry.
not a problem, not a problem. So we're talking about some of the things we're going to be talking about tonight. And Shane, tell everybody, because last week I was shocked the amount of new listeners that we had to the show. Tell people about your law firm.
Sure, we're located in Delray Beach and just off Atlantic Avenue. We're across from the IPIC Theater, if you know where that is. I've been practicing in that same spot since 1999. So we're a small firm. We represent people injured by the negligence of others. That's our primary focus. Um, we represent people throughout the state, not just in Delray Beach or Palm Beach County. But we pride ourselves on making sure that our clients are treated like family and that they get the personal attention they deserve and that they need when they're going through a situation that is something they're not really used to going through, and they need the professional guidance of somebody that has been through it several times.
Shane, there are so many different areas of personal injury law. Tell everybody the different areas that you do cover.
Sure, we do all kinds of different stuff. We represent people primarily involved in auto accidents, but we represent pedestrians that are injured by vehicles, bicyclists injured by vehicles. We represent people that are injured in slip and falls. Basically, all kinds of different things. We don't do medical malpractice, but other than that, dog bites, any other sort of personal injury action. Those are types of cases we get involved in.
Do you get involved with the nursing homes with COVID going on now?
No, the nursing home cases we don't get involved in either. We tend to stay away from the medical end of things um, in terms of those types of cases.
Shane, you know what? It's so important because a lot of people don't know that when they're in an auto accident, sometimes an injury doesn't come up for days later. And what I've learned from you is they should pick up the phone right away and call you and get your advice because it doesn't cost them anything. And you've seen so many, especially when it comes to auto accidents.
Yeah, it's not unusual that when someone's involved in an automobile accident, they may not initially feel injured or feel that bad. When somebody's involved in an accident, that's not something that happens every day. Your adrenaline is going, and you may not at that time feel it, but a lot of times you'll start to develop symptoms and start to feel not so great, by the following day or within the next couple of days. So, if you are injured, certainly give our office a call. We're more than willing to talk to you and explain the process. Like you were mentioning earlier when I was just logging in here, we use this called a contingency fee agreement. So if we don't collect any money for you, it doesn't cost you anything for our representation. But before we even get to that point, we're certainly more than happy to give you a free consultation related to a personal injury case and go through listen to your situation and give you the advice we think would be best for your particular case.
I was just getting ready to say because I've had people who have called these big conglomerate PI firms. The difference that I've learned to accept is that when they go to a firm like you, I mean, they were always complaining, God, I'd called my attorney and he'd call me back a week later. And it wasn't even, sometimes, a lot of times, it wasn't even him. But with your firm, first of all, because it's a smaller firm, you might not be able to get back with them that day, but it's sure you're going to take a week, right?
No, absolutely not. I mean, my firm really consists of myself and my assistant Jane. We have another paralegal who works with us from time to time. But if you call our office, my assistant's very good at being able to answer questions. But if you feel you need to speak to me or she's unable to answer a question, I'm available. And I know I always tell you that if you call me uh, after lunchtime, I may not be able to get back to you that day, but certainly by the next day, if you call before lunchtime, you will hear from me that day.
I think that's wonderful. Um, let's get started. Let's talk about, because a lot of people don't know about the no fault law in Florida.
Okay. Yeah, that's important to understand. Florida's a no-fault state, and so because of that, we're required to carry what's called personal injury protection, also known as PIP. Uh, Basically, in Florida, the only two coverages you're required to carry are PIP and property damage. So, personal injury protection is to pay for medical expenses if you're injured in an accident where it involves a motor vehicle. And property damage is, of course, what it sounds like. If you run into somebody's car or their fence and you damage it, it pays for those things. So, but personal injury protection, a lot of times people they get in an accident, they're not at fault. You might be sitting at the stoplight minding your own business when all of a sudden somebody on their cell phone plows into the back of you. And when they call me up and I ask, well, who's your insurance carrier? And they tell me, I say, okay, well, that's who we're going to use for your personal injury protection. And they'll say, well, what is that? And I tell them, well, Florida's a no fault state. So regardless of the fact you were minding your own business and the other person wasn't paying attention and ran into the back of you, under the PIP statute, the first $10,000 of your medical bills gets paid through your insurance through PIP.
What if it's over 10,000?
Well, that would be damages that you would be able to recover from the negligent party. So another thing that's important to note is, you don't just because you're paying for the $10,000 in coverage doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be afforded that by your insurance company. They only give you $2,500 unless you're determined to have suffered what's called an emergency medical condition. That can only be determined by a medical doctor, a nurse practitioner, a physician's assistant, or a dentist. So a chiropractor can't say that you have an EMC. But if you don't have an emergency medical condition, your PIP benefits are capped at $2,500. Assuming that you get an EMC designation, then you have the $10,000 in coverage.
You know, Shane, it's amazing. And I wanted to ask you this last time. There are more and more drivers that are they're doing their cell phones while they're driving. And you can almost tell because they're going in from lane to lane. Are you seeing a lot more accidents due to cell phones?
Well, I think there are a lot more accidents due to cell phones. I don't know. I mean, there are times, obviously, when someone will come in and either the police report will note that the other party was on a cell phone or the other party admits to my client, hey, I was, on my phone. But, what happens a lot of times, and you may not know pre-suit, but in the event where we have to file a lawsuit to pursue the case, one of the standard interrogatories that we send during the discovery process is to ask for the other party's cell phone number and the carrier that they have, and we'll request their phone records to see whether or not at the time of the accident they were on the phone. So that does happen, certainly, and you see it every day. You drive down the road, you see people. Like you said, they're not. It seems like, hey, this person's not paying attention. What the heck are they doing? And then you look into the cabin of their car, and sure enough, they're on their phone.
They're on their phone, right? Um, Shane, give everybody your phone number and that great website you've got.
Sure. The phone number is 561 272-8337. And you can find us at farnsworthlaw.net. And if you go there, we have all our previous radio shows at the Ask the Experts link, as well as some video frequently asked questions at the top that you can see that goes over a lot of the stuff that you may have questions about.
Great website. We're going to go to break. When we come back, we got more with attorney Shane Farnsworth. We're talking about personal injury, mainly auto accidents tonight. And we will be right back. Don't go away.
As an experienced personal injury attorney, Shane Farnsworth understands the key to success in your case. You are entitled to compensation for your injuries, medical bills, lost wages, and personal loss. Mr. Farnsworth will go to trial if you are not offered the fair settlement that you deserve. The law offices of Shane M. Farnsworth, VA, has established itself as one of the leading personal injury law firms in the South Florida area. They give all their personal injury clients a promise. If they don't recover monetary damages in your case, you will not pay any attorney's fees. Shane M. Farnsworth, VA, offers a free consultation to evaluate your legal case. If they take your case, they only get paid if they win. Whether you've been injured in a motor vehicle crash, slip and fall, workplace accident, or through the negligence of someone else, you need attorney Shane Farnsworth fighting on your side. Call now for a free consultation. That's 561-272-8337.
This is the Ask the Expert show. I am your host, Steve O. We're here with attorney Shane Farnsworth. He is a local personal injury attorney. His office is in Delray, but it doesn't mean if you have an accident, you live in Broward County, he can definitely help your situation. Shane, if you have health insurance, why do you need PIP?
Well, because Florida is a no-fault state and you're required to have PIP coverage under the law here, if you're involved in an auto accident or injured, even as a pedestrian or a bicyclist, by a automobile, the primary insurance is going to be the PIP coverage. You can still utilize your health insurance, but it's a secondary coverage. So once your benefits are exhausted as to the PIP, at that point, you can start to utilize the health insurance. So I always tell people it's super important that if you're involved in an accident, especially if you get transported to the hospital, make sure you provide to them both your automobile insurance information and your health insurance information, because if you don't, sometimes what will happen is they only have the health insurance information and they'll bill that. And once your health insurance realizes that's an auto accident, they're going to reject that bill, and then you're going to have to go through the process of having the PIP pay for it. So it's just easier if you have the information with you, give your providers both the PIP coverage and the health insurance.
So we're always talking about the driver of the car if a car is in an accident. How does PIP work if it's a passenger in the car that belongs to someone else and a crash happens? How is the passenger covered?
Well, I'll give you an example. So let's say that you and I are driving down the road, you're my passenger in my vehicle, and somebody T-bones us and you're injured. So the way that it would work is that if you own a vehicle or you live with a resident relative who owns a vehicle, then you would be covered by that PIP coverage. So they look to you first. So if Steve has a car, he's just riding with Shane, but he has his own car and he has insurance on it, you would use your PIP coverage. Now,
Okay.
if Steve doesn't own a vehicle, but he lives with his brother who does own a vehicle, he's a resident relative, you would be using your brother's PIP coverage. Now, if Steve lives alone and doesn't own a vehicle, doesn't live with any resident relatives, then Shane's PIP coverage would then cover you.
For an additional $10,000?
No, just up to the $10,000.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you don't get to stack it. No, it's just for the initial 10,000.
Okay. Um, I guess you see all kinds of coverages out there. What should someone make sure that they have in their coverage? It seems like people find out when it's after the accident that they should have had certain things in their insurance plan that they didn't. But by then it's too late, though.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And I think some of the confusion is, as we were talking about earlier, the only the only required coverages in the state of Florida are the personal injury protection and the property damage. So the personal injury protection pays for medical care if you're injured, and the property damage pays for damage you caused to property. So that really doesn't cover situations where you get in an accident and injure somebody else, or you're injured by somebody who either doesn't have insurance or have sufficient insurance. So one thing that's super important to have is bodily injury coverage. That's to cover you if you're negligent and injure somebody else. Um,
Mhm.
Now, in Florida, bodily injury coverage isn't required. So let's flip that and say that you were injured by, someone else is driving, they crash into you and injure you. If they don't have bodily injury coverage, then there's nowhere to collect from them on their insurance unless you also have what's called uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage. And
Oh,
that is probably the most important coverage, in my opinion, to have because there's a lot of people driving with either no bodily injury coverage or insufficient bodily injury coverage. So if someone crashed into you and they don't have bodily injury coverage, but you have uninsured motorist coverage, they would pay for your damages up to your uninsured motorist limits. Now, one thing that's important to note is that you can't just buy uninsured motorist coverage and not have bodily injury coverage. It doesn't work that way. You have to buy bodily injury coverage. And once you have bodily injury coverage, you can purchase uninsured motorist coverage up to the limits of your bodily injury coverage. So I always try to encourage everyone to buy the highest limits of bodily injury that you can for two reasons. One, it helps protect you if you get in an accident that you cause and you hurt somebody else. And two, if you're involved in an accident and the other person doesn't have insurance or enough insurance, if you have uninsured motorist coverage up to your bodily injury limits, that's going to be of a huge benefit to you.
if I've mentioned this, I apologize, but there is a time frame with PIP coverage that you have to get treated.
There is, yes. It used to be before they changed the statute, and this was several years ago now. Um, if you got injured in an accident, you could, as long as the injury is from the accident, you could treat sort of whenever you want. But nowadays, they changed the statute and you have to treat within 14 days of the accident. If you don't treat within 14 days of the accident, you don't get afforded your PIP benefit. So I know we've talked about this on previous shows. If you're injured, it's important to get to the doctor as quickly as possible. For purposes of tonight's show, it's important to get there within 14 days because of the PIP statute to make sure you have coverage. But it's also important to get to the doctor as soon as you have injuries so the doctor can go ahead and diagnose you, get you treatment, and also document those injuries so they can be attributed to the accident. Because if you're going to be pursuing a personal injury action, you have the burden of showing not only that the other person was liable for the accident, but that you were injured and it's a permanent injury. So you want to have the medical documentation, as close to the time of the accident as possible.
It's so amazing that, and this is mostly what you do is personal injury. You do some litigation also, but you've seen just about everything you could possibly see. And so when someone comes to your office, and now I guess you're still doing Zoom or something like that, they don't have to come to your office. Um, it's amazing. You've seen so many cases, and you have an idea when you hear a case of what the outcome is going to be usually. Is that right?
Well, in terms of evaluating it as to the liability part of it, yes. Um, As far as the injuries, until the person, finishes treatment and you really see what's going on, it's hard to put a value on it. And you can't really do that in the beginning because you don't have the information to do that. But, like I was saying before, the first thing is liability. You have to show that the other person was negligent. And that's the first step. Once you have liability, then you have to prove your damages. You have to show what your injuries are and that you have a permanent impairment from those injuries. So that's something that comes from going to the doctor, having the doctor treat you, and record in their notes what's going on. And at the end, what happens is they'll usually write a final report that will tell us, hey, this person was injured, and this is what the injuries are. We attribute the injuries to this accident, and going forward, this is what we think the treatment plan would be in the future, how often they got to come see us, whether or not we think they're a surgical candidate. All those sorts of things are things that develop as the case goes along until somebody has an MRI, which is usually not till 6-8 weeks into it, a month and a half, 2 months. You don't know do they have a herniated disc? Is it a disc that's going to require surgery? Is it something they can just live with? So those things, like I said, they develop as the case goes on.
Shane, I love having you on. I think people right now, because we're going to give out your phone number, plus it's on the screen right now, but you just never know when an accident's going to happen. And God forbid we don't ever want that happening. But, it's nice to know, hey, I heard this great personal injury attorney on the Ask the Expert show. Give everybody your phone number.
Sure. It's 561-272-8337.
I'm going to actually repeat it. 561-272-8337. And your website?
FarnsworthLaw.net.
Keep that. You put it in your drawer. You never know. Shane, you'll be back again with us next month. We love having you on the show. I'm sorry about the difficulties, but you will be back next month with more Ask the Experts. Shane Farnsworth, a personal injury attorney here in South Florida. And then we'll be back on Thursday, actually tomorrow night at 7 o'clock our new time. So we'll see you tomorrow night. Thanks, Shane.
Bye, Steve.
Thanks for listening to the Ask the Expert Show, featuring interviews with local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Call our office at 888-574-6999 to become one of our experts on the show. And tune in again next week for more Ask the Expert.